Good morning, Liberty. It is Wednesday morning, June 19th, 2019. My name is Michael Bolden, broadcasting to you live from my home office and studio here in downtown Los Angeles for the 10th Amendment Center. We multicast our stream live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. You can find all of our archives and the podcast version of the show over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/Good Morning Liberty. Otherwise, if you're watching live, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, DLive, Twitch, Periscope, wherever, or if you're watching in the archive, I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. On this episode, we're going to talk about the latest status, legal status, I put legal in quotes, of CBD under federal law and regulation. A lot of people tell me over and over again, like, oh, hey, Bolden, you know, this CBD stuff, it's everywhere, so it must be legal. I can find it in the store. I can buy it online. I can have it shipped across state lines. So it must be legal. But this is absolutely not the case. And the FDA just held its first public hearing at the end of last month. I think it was on the 31st of May, something like that, to discuss what they're going to do to regulate and control this market. They're basically behind the ball and trying to get their little grips on it right now. But it is illegal, according to the FDA, in most situations, but yet we find it all over the place. Now, normally I would go right over into the live chat and say hello to everybody. I am saying a quick, kind of broad hello to everyone. I appreciate you spending some time with me wherever you are joining us, whether it's live or in the archive. But I do have to cut the episode a little bit shorter than what I normally do on the Monday and Wednesday shows, which are the longer ones. Friday is 10 to 15 minutes usually, but I'm going to cut this one a little bit shorter than normal because at 10 a.m. my time, so in less than a half hour, I'm recording an episode of the Tom Woods Show, back on that show for first time in quite a while. Pretty excited about that with Michael from Libertarian Party Mises Caucus this morning. So I want to cut this one short so I can have time to make sure I've got everything set up and ready to go to talk with Tom. But look for that interview in the near future. I think he usually publishes them a few days later at tomwoods.com. So let's get right into this. First of all, I want to reference one episode that I did right at the end of last year, because this so-called farm bill, I guess we could probably call it the food stamp bill rather than the farm bill, because that's really what it does. After they passed the farm bill, everyone was telling me, oh, they legalized hemp, so now CBD is legal as well. Well, I covered that in full detail on an episode on December 28th, What's Next for Hemp and CBD After the Farm Bill. I will make sure that that link is in the show notes archives over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/Good Morning Liberty. If you want to jump over and watch it now, if you're on YouTube, you've got the link accessible to you now. But the short version is that even though they legalized or decriminalized industrial hemp in that bill, they have a specific exception to it, which makes it so it isn't, at least on CBD. But let's look at a few other things. First of all, again, people always tell me that CBD is available everywhere. And here's this article from Forbes. According to research, the market is anticipated to reach $20 billion in sales by 2024. Even my own brother, at some point, he was out here visiting recently on some business, and we hung out a little bit. And he was saying, how can this be illegal? How can this not be a legal substance? Like, people are making billions of dollars on this. And I think, to me, that is an example of how nullification works. Nullification is really effective, even if people don't realize that what they're doing is nullifying. When there's enough people, enough states, enough businesses all willing to do things that the federal government says that they're not allowed to do, you end up with $20 billion in sales by 2024. They say from candies to cosmetics, CBD is expanding to new product categories. For example, Ben & Jerry's just announced its plan to launch a CBD-infused ice cream once CBD is legalized at the federal level. So Ben & Jerry's recognizes part of it, and they're not going to cross that line. I think some of the larger manufacturers are staying, or larger companies are staying away from it because it's maybe a little bit more risky, or they're more risk averse in their business. And then they go on and say, currently 47 states have legalized CBD for human use, according to Consumer Reports. I'm not sure if that number is actually correct. I think it's actually a little bit lower, but it's a significant part of the country that is saying you can do this. And this other report that I saw at Marijuana Moment led me to TSA.gov. Supposedly the TSA is now letting people have CBD on the flight. And the short version is they basically updated their policy. And if you're watching the video now, I've got the TSA policy here for medical marijuana. They consider CBD either medical marijuana or if it has a certain THC level or above. If it's below it, it's an industrial hemp product, but the industrial hemp product is still regulated by the FDA. And they say this: marijuana and certain cannabis-infused products, including some cannabidiol, CBD oil, remain illegal under federal law except for products that contain no more than 0.3% THC or that are approved by the FDA. TSA officers are required to report any suspected violations of law to local, state, or federal authorities. Well, which one's which, and how does it qualify? Basically, what the TSA does is they've made a statement that says, we are not trying to stop people from getting on planes because they are carrying CBD. But it is up, and it says here at the bottom, I can't even scroll up high enough. It says, quote, the final decision rests with the TSA officer on whether an item is allowed through the checkpoint. So people are getting a little bit confused. They see a report that says the TSA is now allowing it. Basically, the TSA is turning a blind eye. They're reiterating that the FDA has control over this, and I'll get into a little bit more detail on that in a moment. And at the same time, they're leaving it to the discretion of the TSA agent what they're going to do. Now, if they want to say this thing is illegal, if that particular agent says this is illegal and we're not going to let this person through, what they would do is they would turn them over to local law enforcement. And now if local law enforcement, because 47 states supposedly have decriminalized or legalized CBD, if local law enforcement doesn't actually have any criminal activity or criminal charges for someone carrying CBD, then local law enforcement does nothing. Maybe the TSA just makes you throw it out. I just flew with TSA, well, LAX is a different story, but back and forth to Milwaukee, I flew with some CBD products back and forth and had no problems. I mean, I just laid it out in the cart because whatever. I mean, if they're going to throw out a couple of gummies, it's going to cost me a few bucks, but it helps me sleep or relax, reduce some anxiety through travel, which is a horrible experience. So the confusion is all these different things are happening, so therefore it must be legal. And Mike Meharry, in his article that I'd like to cover here, points out that this isn't the case. And just a quick reiteration of what was passed in this so-called Farm Bill. And he writes, with the passage of the Farm Bill, the federal government now treats industrial hemp as an agricultural commodity instead of controlled substance. And because CBD, which it comes from a number of places, but it is most commonly extracted from the resin of the flower of the industrial hemp plant, which is not the marijuana plant, for lack of a better term. They're cousins, cannabis plants, different types of cannabis plants. The marijuana version has high THC or can be bred to have very high THC, and the hemp is used for clothing, for rope, for oil, for food, granola, and soaps, all kinds of other things. And then you can also get this CBD, this compound, from the flower, the resin of the flower. And so people think, oh, well, industrial hemp is decriminalized, and this comes from the industrial hemp plant in most situations, so therefore it must be legal. Quick re-up on this. While the DEA, Mike writes, no longer has the authority to regulate hemp, the provisions of the Farm Bill have no bearing on FDA rules and regulations regarding CBD. In fact, a section of the Farm Bill makes this explicit. They say specifically, regulations and guidelines, effects on other laws states, quote, nothing in this subtitle shall affect or modify the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. In other words, the so-called authority for the FDA. Now, mind you, I believe the FDA shouldn't exist under the Constitution. The Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act shouldn't exist under the Constitution. But under the people with guns, the way that they read this, the people who passed the law specifically said, we're going to decriminalize or legalize hemp unless it's CBD. And then we're kicking the can over to the FDA. And here's what the FDA had to say about this. Is their overview. They just published this on June 14th, so 5 days ago. This is an overview of the hearing, the first public hearing that they had on CBD late last month. And this is an overview of it. They say, quote, On the state level, some jurisdictions have eliminated certain prohibitions on cannabis or cannabis-derived compounds. On the federal level, the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, the Farm Bill, removed cannabis and cannabis derivatives that are very low in THC from the definition of marijuana in the Controlled Substances Act. At the same time, that legislation specifically preserved the FDA's responsibility over such products. So the FDA is reiterating what the Farm Bill says. They are now the ones that determine whether or not a CBD product is legal or not. And they say, as these other laws have changed and as more cannabis products come to the market, whether lawfully or otherwise, this is in their own statement. I don't think they really want to say there's billions of dollars flooding the market, it's totally illegal, because they're going to look like an incompetent, they're going to look like what they are. So they just kind of hint that, there might be some products that are not lawfully on the market. They say the FDA's role is becoming more practically relevant to many effective stakeholders. So the FDA is now reiterating just last week, or I guess late last week, that would have been last Friday, that they have authority over CBD. And they also go through some of the ways they have so-called authority over this. They say, for example, if a product is being marketed as a drug, meaning, for example, that it's intended to have a therapeutic effect, such as treating a disease, then it's regulated as a drug. And it generally cannot be sold without FDA approval. So anyone who is selling CBD and making a claim that it treats something, doesn't matter what it is, insomnia, anxiety, inflammation. As soon as they say that on the packaging, on their website, on their label, whatever it may be, FDA says this is a drug. And there's only been one drug approved called Epidiolex. It's a CBD isolate. It's not the full natural version, basically, from a plant. And it costs $32,000 a year. $32,000 a year compared to, maybe $20 a month for the same dose if you get it from the plant version from a lot of these manufacturers. So they're basically saying as soon as it's marketed, as soon as someone markets this as being able to treat something, then it's a drug. And it's totally illegal unless the FDA goes through, or unless they go through millions and millions of dollars of research and clinical trials that the FDA approves. Multiple phases. Long time. So anybody who's got a CBD product that as soon as they make that claim, it's an illegal drug. They also say, quote, food, including dietary supplements, is regulated differently, but with the same overarching goal of protecting consumers. I don't think they're protecting anybody but the people who want to charge $32,000 for a $50 product, to be honest with you. And they say, among other things, it is currently illegal. So even if you don't make a claim that it has therapeutic effects, that it acts like a drug, it treats something, as soon as you put it in a food or dietary supplement, which is basically everything else, I think the most difficult gray area is when it's in beauty and cosmetic products, but I did another episode on that, and I don't believe that the FDA sees those as legal either, but there's just so much of it happening that they're just trying to kind of drill down on certain parts of it. So soon as it's marketed as a food or a dietary supplement, I get it in my coffee, cold brew coffee with CBD in it. You can get it in teas. You can get it in all kinds of stuff, at least here in California. I mean, I'm not sure how available. When I was in Milwaukee last weekend, was it last weekend? I went for my nephew's graduation, so I apologize, Pierce, if I don't remember the exact date. It was there. It was a whirlwind, man. So when I was there, we went to a little health market in their neighborhood, and they had all kinds of stuff, chocolates and other foods that were available in Wisconsin as well. But as soon as you do this, it's illegal because according to the FDA, it is, quote, currently illegal to put into interstate commerce a food to which CBD has been added or to market CBD as or in a dietary supplement, period. And we know how they view interstate commerce. Basically, anything in the marketplace affects interstate commerce, so therefore they see it all as under their control. Now, they've even started to issue warning letters on these. And there's a whole page on the FDA website talking about how they're sending out. And I don't know how they're picking which companies to target with these warning letters. But there's a few that are sent out every month. I don't know why it doesn't format, but when I have it at this size, I can't see the full list. But I did pull up one to NutraPure LLC. This was sent out in March. And this is the letter. The claims on your website establish that the products are drugs under this section because they are intended for use in the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease and/or, talking about being specific here, they are not being very clear, and/or because they are intended to affect the structure or any function of the body. Basically, if you sell CBD on your website and they take products for, quote, hemp oil that contains CBD and CBD soft gels, and because supposedly this works doing something, and they say this on the website, then the FDA says this is a drug. And they go on and they say, as explained further below, introducing or delivering these products for introduction into interstate commerce for such uses violates the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. They give a link to the FDA website, not to the act itself, but they give all these different sections of the federal act. And so they're warning people, what you're doing, you're selling this is illegal. Then they go on. For people who try to do an end run and say, well, we're not going to market it as a drug. I know, like some of my friends in the health freedom world, what they'll do when they're talking about things, for example, like on a YouTube show, they'll say, well, we're not making any claims about what this product does. And that's generally the end run around being targeted for marketing an illegal drug or a non-approved drug according to the FDA. You just don't make claims about what it does. You can have someone else talk about it. Like, for me, it does this. For me, CBD, and since I don't sell the product, I say for me, it works great for inflammation. After I run, I have a very sore ankle or a sore knee. I take a little bit of CBD, 5 or 2.5 milligrams, and it helps reduce the inflammation far better than something like Tylenol, which is incredibly bad for my liver. So a lot of people say, well, we're just going to market it as a dietary supplement. We're not going to make any claims about what it does, but the FDA takes it to another level. And they go in this letter, and the varying letters to different companies are about the same. They say, although you market hemp oil and CBD soft gels as dietary supplements, FDA has concluded, based on available evidence, that CBD products are excluded from the dietary supplement definition under these sections. So they've got these exceptions under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act that basically say if you just market it as a dietary supplement and you make no claims about what it's going to do, people can make their own choice on their own, then you can sell this stuff. But they have specifically said that CBD does not qualify to be marketed as a dietary supplement because it has gone through multiple steps of clinical trials for this Epidiolex. So as soon as someone started making it for an FDA-approved drug, then there's no more dietary supplement selling allowed because some company that wants to sell for $32,000 a year. I'm not sure if anybody's even buying it, which is absurd. They say there is an exception if the substance was marketed as a dietary supplement or as a conventional food before the new drug investigations were authorized. However, based on available evidence, FDA has concluded that this is not the case for CBD. CBD is the active ingredient in the approved drug product Epidiolex. As soon as the company started doing that and the FDA accepted it for clinical trials and tests and then approved it as a drug, then no one can sell it as a supplement. So they held this hearing to determine whether or not they could make an extra exception. And they had maybe like 100 different industry experts come out and testify on this in a public hearing. And here's how, let's see what Mike had to say. On May 31st, the FDA held its first hearing on CBD. After the meeting, the same questions remain as before. Will the federal agency continue to maintain its current regulation and prohibition of hemp-derived cannabinoids, or will it give in to market forces and open the door for general sale and use of CBD? And he points out that the hearing that they had just last month, did not result in any kind of policy change, but is widely seen as the first step toward a comprehensive regulatory scheme. I love that he called it a scheme for the CBD. What that will look like remains to be seen. And like I said, there was around 100 industry experts that testified, and almost all of them, and I'm not sure what kind of industry experts. There weren't any Austrian economists, clearly. There weren't any libertarians. There weren't any constitutionalists, because every single person was basically calling on the FDA to institute regulations, rather than just say, you know what, forget it. We're not going to touch this. We don't want anything to do with it. We're going to say it's a free-for-all. Go ahead. Like, this isn't our job. We shouldn't exist. That will never happen from the FDA. Basically, what they have now is an open comment period, because they're going to issue regulations on CBD. We don't know if they're going to make an exception on CBD. I think the comment period is going until July 2nd or so. I'm not sure exactly when. But they have an open comment period where people can submit information online or submit paper for or against regulation of CBD. And then the FDA will take that into consideration and make a choice on how they're going to treat this product. And we'll know in the next few months whether they consider it fully illegal, like they do today, or if they recognize that the market is already filled with billions of dollars worth of this product, and then maybe they just try to clamp down and only support the big companies that are doing it. I'm not sure how that's going to play out. And Mike puts it this way, and I think this is really the most interesting part of it all. He says, even with both the FDA and DEA theoretically enforcing federal laws and regulations banning CBD, state and local action have already nullified federal prohibition in practice and effect. There's no reason to think that won't continue as long as states maintain the same stance on CBD as they did back in 2014. Simply put, the feds lack the personnel and resources to crack down on CBD, even if the FDA wants to. And I'm pretty certain, based on the statements that I read, that they absolutely want to, but will they be able to do anything about a market that's this large, this fast? I've heard some people say it's the fastest growing product in the, I guess we'll call it alternative natural medicine or healing realm in history. They've never seen something take off this quickly. Will the FDA be able to get their grimy hands on it? I'm certain they're going to try. But as Mike puts it, if enough people continue to say no, do what they want, if the market continues going forward, markets are stronger than government. Anyways, I do have to cut it short, like I mentioned earlier, because I'm going to, in a few minutes here, I got to record an interview with Tom Woods. I'm pretty excited about that. Keep an eye out for that. I hope you found this interesting, educational, fun to watch, all that good stuff. Make sure to smash the like, subscribe, continue leaving comments. I'm going to check in the next hour or so. I'll go back and look at the comments that you guys have left here on the live stream or later on in the archives. Reviews over on iTunes are very helpful. And of course, all of the archives over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/Good Morning Liberty. Thank you so much for joining me again today. I'll see you next time on Friday, and have a great day.